Cooler awoke within his cabin, though you couldn't really count what he got as rest. The living metal gifted to him seemingly had a mind and power all its own, as the iceling always felt energized. It was as if he were constantly being fed power despite being up for weeks on end. And even on the rare occasion he relaxed enough to quote unquote sleep, it was more of a meditative state and only lasted for a couple hours at a time. During this, he was always cognizant of his surroundings, listening in on the occasional thump or conversation outside his quarters. Truly, this momentary rest the cyborg got wasn't sleep, but it was one of the few times he wasn't constantly stressed, though even that wasn't guaranteed. Cooler often tried to ponder what he'd do once the galaxy was freed from the grasp of his wicked bloodline. Perhaps a nice long vacation on Planet Brunch, as Salza often talked about its nice sunny beaches and even nicer women, though that didn't exactly entice the Iceling. However, when thinking of being out in the sun, a sudden flash of Cooler's time out in space pervaded this happy thought. Memories of how the nearby star had burned and scarred what remained of his flesh made any thoughts of being in direct sunlight instantly sour in his mind. Besides, if Cooler went to any public beach, he'd stick out like a sore thumb. The cyborg walked into his bathroom, looking at himself in the mirror and seeing the piercing red eyes that somehow looked tired, despite them being made of metal. This body, it was meant for nothing but combat. Yeah, that was his only purpose now. Whatever came afterwards didn't matter. He had to focus on destroying Frieza. Cooler walked out of his quarters, going down the hallway only for two children to smack right into his prosthetic legs. He looked down to see Granolah and some cyan-colored child with small horns, both rubbing a small bruise on their respective heads. Cooler had half a mind to blast these children away, though it was just a passing thought, and the more important question of who these children were came up. Just then, a familiar woman runs in, apologizing and dragging both of the kids to their feet. This was Muezli, whom Cooler didn't know had joined the skeleton crew. Well, she hadn't, not really at least. After she had the children apologize, she explained that both Flake and Salza had wanted her to join, just in case the Heaters tried to exact their revenge. Apparently the other child, the cyan one, was named Angela, and there was also another child on deck named Kui, both being rescued from planets the rebels liberated. Cooler wasn't exactly happy that Salza turned part of his ship into a daycare, but there wasn't much he could do about it now. However, if their ship was attacked or boarded, Muezli better be able to protect them, because Cooler himself wouldn't step in, something he made sure the Cerulean knew. With that clear, the cyborg made his way towards the ship's command bridge, finding Salza and 268 arguing about the next step of their plan. Salza had been preparing for months to hit Planet Herb, the home planet of the Cybermen. 268, however, was confident that after Yardrat, the crew could take on Frieza and report back to the Big Getty star. But if that wasn't the case, they'd need to travel back to Serial for something, though he never specified what. Salza didn't like being ordered around by a robot, let alone left in the dark about its plans. But when Cooler walked in, the two had to cool off. The cyborg admitted that Cybermen shouldn't concern his crew, since they should easily be able to deal with such weak creatures. Salza, however, said that disrupting the production of Cybermen would help not only their crew, but also halt the acquisition of new planets, potentially saving hundreds of thousands of lives. This argument didn't really intrigue Cooler, but perhaps taking out Planet Herb would be a good test of Broly's power. Speaking of the Saiyan, he and Paragus had adjusted to life on the ship, them being far more docile due to having real food for the first time in around a decade. Broly himself was still uneducated, something Cooler didn't much like. Sure, the boy was nothing but a tool to end Frieza, but having the ability to think and properly formulate plans during battle was important. Building up the Saiyan's mind would be a challenge, but hopefully these sages on Yardrat would be able to do it. Only a few hours later, the ship alerted them that Yardrat was only minutes away. Good, the cyborg was done waiting, and wanted to do anything, even if it was just image training. Once touching down and exiting the ship, Cooler was surprised to see nothing but an empty planet. But both he and 268 could tell something was off. Their robotic eyes would occasionally glitch out when looking over parts of the planet, as if their visuals were being altered or distorted. Cooler feigned thinking this planet was devoid of life, and told his crew to fire the ship back up, despite 268's protests. The cyborg was having none of it though, instead lifting a single finger into the air and charging up a small supernova, pretending that he was going to destroy the planet. And that's when he feels someone touch him, his supernova instantly shrinking in size before several dozens of creatures appear around him. Some of them were gigantic, easily towering over even the ship, whilst one was holding a swirling ball of energy. "Ah, so you finally show yourselves, great sages of Yardrat," Cooler said whilst scanning each of the aliens. Most of them looked weak and pudgy, however, the one holding what he presumed was his energy looked different. This one was pink, tall, thin, and had a cocky smile on his face. "Yeah? And what are you doing here? Trying to crash the annual Peace Festival we're having?" Peace Festival? What kind of aliens were these people? Clearly they weren't so peaceful if they had abilities suited for battle. However, Cooler soon felt calm as a giant blue figure walked onto the field, and from the whispers he heard, this person's name was Paibara. "What seems to be the problem, Tori? Our guests seem wary from their travels. Let's get them settled in so they can enjoy our festival." Paibara put a hand on the pink Yardrat, who was seemingly known as Tori. "Elder Paibara, you can clearly sense the evil within his heart. Don't think I dare let a monster near our people. These people are a threat to Yardrat." "Oh, my dear boy. Turmoil and evil are two very different states of the soul. These visitors will be allowed to rest on our planet, especially since they seek to end Lord Frieza, the man not even your forces would stand a chance against, This made Tori cross his arms, though he promised to keep an eye on the crew. Paibara welcomed Cooler to the planet, and, as if reading his mind, asked why'd he come here to train. Cooler admits 268 is the real reason he's here, as he can sense these creatures aren't too powerful on their own, but being able to steal energy would be useful. Paibara says that's a very advanced technique, though agrees to train Cooler and his crew, provided their stay there is peaceful. The two agree, and Cooler allows his crew to exit the ship, though the cyborg is dead set on training as soon as possible. Paibara, however, says they cannot start until tomorrow, as today is a day of celebration. Just then, the elder lifts his arms, lifting a cloak from the planet and revealing a large festival that had been going on this whole time. The cyborg is amazed that Paibara had such an ability, as with this, he'd be able to defeat Frieza without fail, though his crew seemed to be thinking something very different. Granolah, Qui, and Angela immediately run off to explore, with Muesli chasing after them. Some of the skeleton crew also walk into the festival to enjoy themselves, whilst the armor squadron await their orders. Cooler simply tells them to do as they wish, before he sees Broly and Paragus standing by. He's surprised Broly isn't with the other children, but notices the collar around his neck, something Paragus seemingly made with resources from the cargo hold. The cyborg points a finger towards Broly, shooting a powerful finger beam that destroys the collar in one go. Paragus is absolutely livid, but Cooler practically orders Broly to go play with the other kids, whilst staring down Paragus, who relents and tells Broly to do so. Once he's gone, the older Saiyan asks why he'd do such a thing. Simple. If your son is to ever think for himself, you'll need to stop holding his hand. But if he gets out of control, then that'll be my problem. Unless you think you're above me, Saiyan. Cooler glared at Paragus, instantly causing the Saiyan to sweat and bowed down. No, my lord. I just don't want us to forget our mission for revenge. Frieza and Vegeta must pay. And they will. Patience. Good things come to those who wait, Cooler said, walking off into the ship to train. Muesli was having a hard time keeping up with the children, especially Kui, who was the oldest of the three. But luckily, she wasn't alone, as she noticed Broly not too far away. He kept trying to approach the kids, but would stop just before making contact, as if he didn't know how to properly greet them. Muesli approached the boy, who initially backed away with fear in his eyes. However, she stayed calm and told him it was okay, that she would keep him company, and introduced him to the group. The two walked for quite some time, Muesli asking the young Saiyan several questions such as his favorite food, color, etc. From the answers, she figured out that Broly had a very, very small vocabulary and little experience in the outside world. Well, in that case, Muesli would have to teach him as much as she could in their brief time together. The two visited many different booths at the festival, Broly discovering water and many different foods for the first time in his life, with Muesli teaching him several new words as well. Overall, the two were having fun, something both of them needed. That is, until Flake approached them. He casually told Broly to go play with the others while the adults talked, but Broly could tell Muesli felt uncomfortable, to say the least. Flake tried convincing Muesli to go back to the ship with him, but she didn't seem interested at all, telling the brute to go there himself, something he didn't appreciate. When Flake got a little more handsy, he soon found a knee in his crotch and a finger pointed right at his forehead. Despite them being the last of their kind, Muesli had no interest in him. Flake wasn't Granola's father and would never be her husband, something she made sure he knew. She then grabs Broly's hand and walks off, apologizing that the Saiyan had to see that. Luckily, Broly thought she was cool, a capable fighter like his father, but way nicer. The two of them meet up with the other kids, where Broly is introduced and actually becomes friends with them, aside from Kui, who's kinda jealous of his high battle power. Everyone, aside from Flake and Cooler, enjoy the festival for the rest of the night, and even help clean up when it's over. For many members of the crew, this was a nice change of pace, a peaceful day where they didn't have to worry about fighting. Even if they knew what was to come next, they desperately needed this downtime. Once the next day started, Cooler and Broly visited Paibara. The two prepared for the most excruciating training of their lives. However, when the elder Yardrat revealed they'd be meditating, the two were understandably confused. How could meditation make them stronger? Well, Broly had little experience and trusted the adults, so he tried the exercise Paibara provided for him. Cooler was a little more stubborn, but tried out this method of training. As the days went by and Paibara provided more instruction, Cooler found himself more and more frustrated. The cyborg could never increase his battle power with such trivial training. Broly, however, had not only grown in power, but thanks to Baibara teaching him how to read, in knowledge as well. The younger Saiyan listened to everything his mentor said, only questioning it when it opposed something Paragus had taught him. Paibara, however, was very open-minded and would often find a way to convince Broly that his way of training didn't contradict his father's lessons. In fact, it only built upon them. Speaking of building upon, Cooler and the young Saiyan weren't the only two visiting Paibara, as the entire crew wished to become stronger as well. Whilst brutes like Flake and Dori weren't all too impressed with the meditation and quit early on, Salza, Naze, and even Muesli quite liked it. Even Angela, much to everyone's surprise, participated, though she had a much harder time than Broly. Still, Cooler couldn't help but notice that the children progressed far faster than Salza or even himself. He watched Paibara and Muesli guide these two, sparking a memory of how King Cold once taught Cooler himself. In fact, during meditation, this wasn't an uncommon experience at all. Cooler found himself remembering things he thought had been buried long ago. His desire to protect and befriend those under his command. How he wanted to make Cold proud, even if later in life that had faded. It was still something his heart yearned for. Even now, Cooler couldn't ignore the thump in his chest, that rhythmic beat that never ceased to remind his robotic exterior that it was alive. No matter how cold he was, warmth radiated from within. And then the feeling Cooler hated more than ever. His wish to be friends with his brother. The cyborg immediately sat up from his spot and began walking off. "And where are you going, Cooler?" Paibara asked, though they both knew his answer. "I have to complete my mission. I need to destroy planet Herb." "My dear boy, destruction won't solve that cyclone within your—" "Then what will, Paibara? I've sat here and meditated time and time and time again, and nothing happens. The boy's increased in power, but I haven't. Perhaps you've got something against my clan, or perhaps you've used your sorcery to enhance that brat. But I've gone nowhere. If I'm not strong enough to beat Frieza this time, what happens then?" Paibara simply sat there, shaking his head with a solemn expression, something which sparked another feeling Cooler would have to bury. The cyborg grabbed his crew and began setting a course for planet Herb, even if 268 kept ordering him to go back to training. Cooler ordered Muesli and the children to stay on Yardrat, along with Paragus, who refused to leave his son Broly, a sentiment that made the Iceling sick. As the ship took off, 268 demanded that Cooler stick to Fridge's plan, as time was of the essence. However, these arguments were ignored, as the cyborg felt his heart pounding in his chest, and memories of the past flooded his mind, no matter how hard he tried to forget them. And then there was a brief itch in his throat, and the beginnings of a cough arose. But that is where we're going to leave things off for right now. If you enjoyed this part, I'd appreciate it if you need the like button in the crotch, or perhaps even meditated with a subscribe button. But even if you don't, thank you for getting to this part of the video. I'm not very good at writing intros or outros, which is why I usually ramble on at the end, but I feel it important to add a little something at the end of each video. Recently, I've been more interested in writing these what ifs rather than actually producing the video, as I've been wanting to improve the quality of each video, but sometimes I just don't have the time. While I know this channel is more so focused on the audio storytelling, I do want to someday have an editing style somewhat similar to Salad Saiyan, as I do enjoy his videos and they're pretty simple. That said, I think I'm going to try making our 1K sub special in that style. So I'll make an 800 sub special, but will not be making 700 or 900 specials. However, you guys know I will thank you for getting us there. That said, we're already at 648 subs at the time of finishing this script, so, we're pretty close, all things considered. Thank you guys so much. I just know we'll get to 1K by the end of the year, and you better believe I'm not going to stop making videos anytime soon. Speaking of making videos, I should get to editing this. You guys have a good day or night wherever you are. That's it for now. Bye-bye.